Robert's human blood dripped onto the cracked earth, staining the dust red as Deltan claws seized his arms, his squad's torn corpses strewn around the blast crater. 5 years ago, the arrogant Deltan Empire invaded Earth, technologically outmatched humans, forced to submit as slaves and pets. Robert had been press-ganged into the Deltan military as cannon fodder, other humans dragged off as servants. Horus, the Deltan general, proclaimed Earth's defeat over radio as their ships descended, the human fleet destroyed or captured. Robert passed out as they hauled him away. When the Deltans discovered Earth, they had already conquered a dozen planets. Humanity had no choice but to kneel. Humans outnumbered Deltans on the Deltan homeworld, but all wore explosive slave collars, seemingly ensuring permanent submission to their new reptilian overlords. With Earth's last desperate resistance crushed, warpaint still fresh on the Deltan scales, the alien conquest seemed total. Little did the Deltan warriors know, their new human pets would soon rise up and rip them apart. Every human in the galaxy, silently prepared, waiting for the signal to make their move. They would show the Deltans what true ferocity looked like, that humans would never break. Humanity would rather die than live in chains. 2 years passed in a blink. The Deltans suppressed humanity brutally, the surviving members of Earth's military reduced to slaves. Robert, his body healed but marked with scars, stood stiffly at attention behind Zarthax, a high-ranking Deltan commander who had chosen Robert as his personal bodyguard. The human's eyes remained fixed straight ahead as Zarthax conferred with other Deltan generals around a massive hollow table displaying star maps. Robert's ears pricked up at the mention of a new target, the Varisian Confederation, a union of a dozen alien species who had so far resisted Deltan aggression. General Cathtar pointed a clawed finger at a highlighted cluster of systems. The Varisians continue to defy us, but with our new weapon they will submit or perish. Zarthax nodded. Yes, the planet killer is ready. The Varisian homeworlds will burn one by one until they kneel before the Deltan Empire. Their fleets will be helpless against its power. As the generals discussed logistics, Robert noticed several other human slaves weaving through the room, serving drinks and food to the Deltans. His eyes widened slightly as he recognized one of them, Olivia Reese, a fellow soldier who had fought beside him during humanity's last stand. Their eyes met for a split second, a spark of recognition passing between them. Robert's gaze flicked down to the datapad sitting on the edge of the hollow table, its screen filled with schematics of the Deltan superweapon. With a series of subtle hand gestures, he signaled to Olivia his intention to steal the plans. She gave a nearly imperceptible nod, then casually laid her serving tray over the datapad as she offered refreshments to the generals. Her hand slipped beneath the tray, palming the device and tucking it into her sleeve before gracefully exiting the room. Robert stepped forward, offering a drink to Zarthax. As the Deltan commander raised the glass to his lips, Robert's hand darted out, dropping a small pill into the liquid. Zarthax swallowed, then convulsed, the glass slipping from his fingers and shattering on the floor. He collapsed, his eyes rolling back in his head as the fast-acting poison stopped his heart. The other generals leapt to their feet in shock, but Robert was already moving. He snatched Zarthax's plasma pistol from its holster, pivoting and firing at the Deltan leaders. Olivia and the other human slaves drew concealed weapons of their own, adding to the chaos. Plasma bolts and bullets filled the air, Deltan scales and blood splattering the walls and floor. Robert charged forward, blasting a hole in the door and leading the humans in a desperate fight through the corridors of the base. Alarms blared as they ran, Deltan soldiers pouring out to confront them. The sounds of shouting, gunfire and plasma blasts echoed off the walls as the humans cut a bloody path to the hangar bay. Olivia slapped the door controls, the hangar doors rumbling open to reveal a Deltan shuttle. Robert and the others laid down covering fire as they backed into the ship, plasma scorching the hull. Robert punched the throttle, the stolen craft blasting out of the hangar and clawing for open space. Deltan fighters scrambled to pursue, but the humans had a head start. The shuttle's warp drive flared to life, the stolen craft vanishing into faster-than-light speeds with its precious cargo. the plans for the Deltan superweapon, and a spark of hope for humanity's liberation. The stolen shuttle shuddered as Robert pushed its engines to their limits. The swirling blue vortex of the nearest jump point grew larger in the viewscreen. Behind them, the pursuing Deltan fighters unleashed a barrage of plasma bolts. "Incoming fire," Olivia shouted from the co-pilot's seat. Robert swung the shuttle's gun turret around and opened up on the Deltan ships. His shots struck true, turning one fighter after another into expanding clouds of debris and fire. But the Deltans gave as good as they got. A plasma bolt slammed into their shuttle's rear, sending sparks and smoke billowing from the engine compartment. "We're hit," Robert yelled over the scream of alarms. "Brace for impact." The damaged shuttle lurched out of the jump point, careening towards the surface of an unknown planet. Robert fought with the controls, trying to level out their descent, but it was no use. The ground rushed up to meet them, and the shuttle slammed into the rocky terrain with a bone-jarring crunch. Slowly, painfully, Robert and Olivia dragged themselves from the twisted wreckage. They found themselves in a harsh, alien landscape, surrounded by towering red stone formations beneath an unfamiliar sky. Olivia pulled out the stolen datapad, sighing with relief as it powered on. The superweapon plans still intact. "Comms are fried," Robert reported, fiddling with his damaged wrist unit. "We're on our own out here." A guttural war cry split the air. The two humans spun to see a group of four-armed aliens charging towards them, wielding crude but vicious-looking weapons. "Krathax," Olivia spat, recognizing the primitive but famously fierce warriors. "Looks like we jumped out of the frying pan and into the fire." Plasma bolts split the air as Robert and Olivia opened fire, their weapons cutting down the first wave of attacking Krathax. But the aliens kept coming, and soon the humans were forced to engage in brutal hand-to-hand combat. Robert grappled with a massive Krathax warrior, the creature's four muscular arms threatening to overwhelm him. The alien roared in Robert's face, its breath hot and fetid. With a burst of desperate strength, Robert twisted hard, snapping the Krathax's neck with a sickening crunch. Nearby, Olivia had managed to disarm another Krathax, and was using its own wickedly serrated blade to fend off two more attackers. She moved with fluid grace, dodging and weaving around the alien's clumsy swings, her own blade flashing out to leave gaping wounds in their wake. The battle raged on, the two humans drawing on every ounce of their training and experience as they fought for their lives. Slowly but surely, they thinned the ranks of the Krathax warriors until only a handful remained standing. Suddenly, the surviving aliens threw down their weapons and dropped to their knees, their heads bowed in submission before the gore-splattered humans. Robert and Olivia shared a surprised glance, realization dawning. "I think we just became the leaders of a Krathax warband," Robert said, his chest heaving as he caught his breath. As the Krathax warriors knelt before them, Robert and Olivia exchanged a determined look. They had a long road ahead, but this was the first step towards humanity's liberation. The two humans set to work, enlisting the Krathax's help to repair their damaged shuttle. The aliens' metalworking skills, though primitive, proved incredibly effective. Under Robert and Olivia's guidance, they fashioned new engine parts and patched the hull, the clang of hammers and hiss of welding torches filling the air. As they labored, the humans learned more about their new allies. The Krathax elders spoke of a time when their people were proud and free before the Deltans came and enslaved them. They spoke of ancient legends, of a prophecy that two warriors from the stars would lead the Krathax to victory against their oppressors. Word of Robert and Olivia's triumph over the Krathax warband spread like wildfire. Within days, Krathax from across the planet flocked to their banner, eager to fight under the command of these legendary humans. The two warriors found themselves at the head of a growing army, thousands strong and fiercely loyal. With the shuttle repaired and their forces bolstered, Robert and Olivia planned their next move. A Deltan supply depot, heavily guarded but full of vital resources, presented a tempting target. Under the cover of night, the human Krathax army struck. Robert led the charge, his plasma rifle blazing as he cut down Deltan guards. Olivia hacked into the depot's security systems, disabling alarms and opening doors for their troops. The Deltans, caught completely off guard, fell quickly. The Krathax warriors, armed with weapons of human design and fired by a righteous fury, proved unstoppable. Within hours, the depot was theirs, its stockpiles of weapons, fuel and food, now in rebel hands. News of the victory electrified the Krathax resistance. Across the planet, more and more warriors rallied to Robert and Olivia's cause. What had started as a ragtag band grew into a true army, tens of thousands strong. Emboldened, the rebels launched a series of daring raids, striking at Deltan bases and outposts across the sector. The stolen superweapon plans proved invaluable, allowing them to exploit weaknesses in enemy defenses. The Deltans reeled, forced to divert more and more troops to deal with the growing Krathax threat. Their grip on the sector began to slip, their forces stretched thin. In the midst of this campaign, a secret message from Earth reached Robert and Olivia. Human resistance fighters urged them to return, to lead the fight for humanity's homeworld. The two warriors felt torn, knowing their Krathax allies needed them, but the call of duty, the chance to free their own people, could not be ignored. With heavy hearts, Robert and Olivia gathered their Krathax lieutenants. They explained their mission, their need to return to Earth. The aliens, though saddened, understood. The humans had given them hope, a chance to free themselves. Now they had to do the same for their own kind. In a solemn ceremony, Robert and Olivia passed command of the Krathax army to their most trusted alien comrades. Then, with a final farewell, they boarded their shuttle and set course for Earth. The journey would be long and perilous, but they were determined to see it through. Humanity's fate, and the fate of all the Deltans' enslaved peoples, rested on their shoulders. The stolen Deltan shuttle drifted through the inky blackness of space, its engines humming softly. In the cockpit, Robert and Olivia scanned the star-speckled void, their eyes drawn to a faint blinking light on the sensor display. "Distress signal," Robert said, his brow furrowing. "Looks like it's coming from that asteroid field up ahead." Olivia leaned forward, studying the readout. "Could be a trap. The Deltans might be trying to lure us in." Robert shook his head. "No, the signal's not on any Deltan frequency. I say we check it out. If someone needs help, we can't just leave them out here." Olivia nodded, and Robert guided the shuttle towards the tumbling rocks. As they drew closer, the source of the distress call came into view. A battered Varisian ship, its hull pockmarked with scorch marks and jagged holes. Debris floated around it, glinting in the starlight. Robert maneuvered their shuttle into the crippled vessel's hangar bay, the docking clamps engaging with a metallic clunk. He and Olivia donned their helmets and stepped through the airlock, weapons at the ready. Inside, the Varisian ship was a mess of twisted metal and flickering lights. Sparks cascaded from ruptured conduits, and the air was thin, tinged with the acrid scent of smoke. Robert and Olivia picked their way through the wreckage, their footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. A sudden movement caught their eye, and they spun, plasma rifles leveled. A figure emerged from the shadows, hands raised in a gesture of peace. It was a Varisian, his scaly skin a mottled green, and his eyes a bright, intelligent yellow. "Don't shoot!" the Varisian called out, his voice tinny through his helmet speaker. "My name is Zoltar. I'm an engineer, and I need your help." Robert and Olivia lowered their weapons cautiously. "What happened here?" Olivia asked, gesturing to the ruined ship. Zoltar's shoulders slumped. "We were part of a secret weapons project, working on a new type of energy shield that could protect against the Deltan superweapon. But they found out about us. A Deltan patrol ambushed our ship, forcing us to flee. We barely made it this far before our systems gave out." Robert stepped forward. "Where's the rest of your crew?" Zoltar led them deeper into the ship, to a dimly lit chamber where a handful of Varisians lay slumped against the walls, their breathing shallow. "We're all that's left," Zoltar said quietly. "Life support is failing. We don't have much time." Robert and Olivia exchanged a glance. The Varisian technology could be a game-changer in their fight against the Deltans. "We'll help you repair your ship," Robert said. "In exchange, we need your help in our fight against the Deltans." Zoltar's eyes widened. "You're the humans everyone's been talking about? The ones who've been leading the Krathax rebellion?" Olivia nodded. "That's us. And with your energy shield, we might actually stand a chance of beating the Deltans once and for all." Zoltar hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "All right, you have a deal." The three set to work, salvaging parts from the wreckage to patch the Varisian ship's hull and restore its systems. As they labored, Zoltar told them more about the Varisian Confederation, how they were once the most powerful civilization in the galaxy, but had grown complacent and unprepared for the Deltan onslaught. "We were caught off guard," Zoltar said, his voice bitter. "The Deltans hit us hard and fast. They occupied our worlds, scattered our fleets. Now we're just a shadow of what we once were." He paused, his eyes meeting Robert's. "But with the right leadership, the right allies, we could rise again. We could take the fight to the Deltans and make them pay for what they've done." Hours turned into days as they worked, the Varisian ship slowly coming back to life under their skilled hands. Finally, with a hum of power, the energy shield flickered into existence around the vessel, a shimmering barrier of force. Zoltar grinned, his sharp teeth glinting. "It works. With this we can turn the tide against the Deltans." Robert clapped him on the shoulder. "Then let's not waste any more time. We've got a galaxy to save." The two ships, human and Varisian, blasted out of the asteroid field side by side, their engines blazing with newfound purpose. On the bridge of the Varisian vessel, Zoltar brought up a star map, pointing to a cluster of systems. "These are Varisian worlds, but they're under Deltan occupation now. If we can make contact with the resistance cells there, rally them to our cause." Olivia leaned forward. "Then we'll have an army, a real chance to strike back at the heart of the Deltan Empire." Robert nodded, his jaw set with determination. "Set a course, Zoltar. It's time we started building our coalition." The ships leapt into warp, the stars blurring into streaks of light. On planet after planet, Robert, Olivia, and Zoltar met with Varisian freedom fighters, their energy shield allowing them to slip past Deltan patrols undetected. In hidden bases and secret meetings, they shared their vision of a galaxy free from Deltan tyranny, a future where humans and Varisians fought side by side as allies, and one by one, the Varisian resistance pledged themselves to the cause. Their fleet began to gather, swift Varisian strikers, heavily armed human frigates, even a few mighty Krathax battlecruisers. United under the banner of rebellion, they set their sights on Earth and the final battle to come. Standing on the bridge of the lead ship, Robert and Olivia watched the stars stream past, their hands clasped tightly together. They had come so far, endured so much. But the hardest fight was still ahead. Olivia turned to Robert, her eyes blazing with fierce resolve. "We're going to do it," she said softly. "We're going to free Earth, free the galaxy." Robert nodded, his gaze fixed on the distant point of light that was humanity's homeworld. "Whatever it takes," he vowed. "We'll make the Deltans pay for what they've done. We'll make them remember the day they dared to enslave humanity." The fleet plunged onward through the void, hurtling towards the final confrontation, towards destiny itself. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and Robert and Olivia would stop at nothing to see their people, and all the oppressed races of the stars, freed at last from the shackles of Deltan rule. The human Varisian fleet dropped out of warp, the blue-green orb of Earth looming before them. But as they drew closer, their sensors lit up with a chilling sight. A Deltan armada, far larger than any they had encountered, encircled the planet like a swarm of angry hornets. "By the stars," Zoltar breathed, his yellow eyes widening. "They knew we were coming." Robert gripped the armrests of his command chair, his knuckles white. "Then let's give them a welcome they won't forget. All ships, battle stations." The rebel fleet surged forward, plasma cannons and missile launchers primed. The Deltan ships responded in kind, their hulls bristling with weaponry. Space lit up with crisscrossing beams of energy and the flash of explosions as the two fleets clashed. The Varisian energy shields flared to life, shimmering barriers of force that absorbed the brunt of the Deltan's fire. Under this protective umbrella, the rebel ships darted and wove, strafing the enemy formations with volleys of plasma. On the bridge of the flagship, Olivia watched the tactical display with a hawk-like intensity. "Their right flank is weakening," she said, pointing to a cluster of Deltan cruisers. "Concentrate fire there. Break through their lines." But even as the rebels pressed their advantage, a new threat emerged. From the belly of the Deltan dreadnoughts poured swarms of small, agile craft, drone fighters, their hulls sleek and deadly. "Evasive maneuvers," Robert barked, but it was too late. The drones fell upon the rebel fleet like locusts, their plasma cannons stitching deadly patterns across the shields. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks. Crewmen screamed as bulkheads buckled and fires raged. "Fall back," Robert ordered through gritted teeth. "Regroup at—" His words were cut off by a sudden transmission, the voice distorted by static. "Commander, this is Resistance Group Epsilon. We have critical information about the Deltan's planetary defenses." Robert and Olivia exchanged a glance. "Go ahead, Epsilon," Olivia said. "We've infiltrated a key Deltan installation on the surface. There's a weakness in their defense grid, a power relay that controls their planetary shields. If you can take it out, you'll create an opening for a ground assault." Robert leaned forward, hope kindling in his chest. "Transmit the coordinates, Epsilon. We're on our way." He turned to Zoltar. "We need more power to the shields and a way to deal with those drones." The Varisian engineer nodded, his fingers already flying over his console. "I have an idea. A high-powered electromagnetic pulse. It should fry the drone's circuits, but we'll need to get close." "Then that's what we'll do," Robert said. He keyed the fleet-wide comm. "All ships form up on me. We're going to punch a hole right through the heart of their fleet." The rebel ships gathered, a phalanx of steel and plasma. At Robert's command they charged, hurtling headlong into the teeth of the Deltan armada. The enemy ships opened fire, a storm of plasma that hammered against the Varisian shields. But the rebels held firm, their weapons spitting defiance. And as the drones swarmed to meet them, Zoltar's weapon activated. A pulse of electromagnetic energy rippled outward, washing over the drones. They convulsed, circuits frying, and fell like rain, clearing a path to the planet's surface. Robert and Olivia led a squadron of fighters in a daring dive, weaving through a gauntlet of anti-aircraft fire. The Deltan installation loomed before them, a bristling fortress of steel and plasma. Plasma bolts seared past Robert's cockpit, his shield flaring with each hit. Alarms blared, warning of imminent failure, but he pushed on, teeth bared in a defiant snarl. They were close now, the power relay in sight. Robert armed his missiles, his targeting computer locking on. With a triumphant yell he launched, the missiles streaking from his fighter's wings. They struck true, the relay exploding in a burst of fire and shrapnel, and with it the Deltan's planetary defenses flickered and died, a hole torn in their impenetrable shield. Robert and Olivia joined them, their fighters screaming through the atmosphere. As they hurtled towards the battle-scarred landscape of their home, one thought consumed their minds, that they might, at last, free their people from the Deltan's iron grip. That Earth, the cradle of humanity, would be theirs once more. Robert and Olivia's boots hit the scorched earth as they leapt from the landing craft, plasma rifles at the ready. Around them, rebel soldiers poured onto the surface, fanning out into the blasted cityscape. The once proud skyscrapers of New York stood as broken, gutted shells, their windows shattered and walls crumbling. Smoke choked the air, stinging eyes and throats. Everywhere the scars of Deltan occupation marred the land. Alien fortifications rose from piles of rubble, their sleek, angular lines in stark contrast to the ruined human architecture. Slave pens crowded with emaciated humans dotted the streets, guarded by heavily armed Deltan soldiers. The twisted, charred remains of fallen resistance fighters littered the ground, a grim testament to the brutality of the invaders. Robert signaled his troops forward, and they advanced cautiously through the shattered streets. The rebel soldiers picked their way over piles of rubble and abandoned vehicles, eyes scanning for any sign of enemy activity. Suddenly, plasma fire erupted from the windows of a nearby building. Green bolts sizzled through the air, sending chunks of concrete flying as they impacted around the rebels. "Take cover!" Olivia yelled, diving behind the rusted hull of an overturned truck. Robert and his soldiers returned fire, bright blue plasma lancing back at the Deltan positions. "Push forward," he ordered, leading the charge as the rebels dashed from cover to cover, closing in on the enemy. They were joined by a ragtag group of human resistance fighters, men and women clad in tattered uniforms and wielding an assortment of scavenged weapons. "About time you showed up," one of them shouted over the din of battle, grinning fiercely as he lobbed a grenade at the Deltan fortification. Together, the combined human forces pressed on, fighting their way through the ruined streets meter by blood-soaked meter. The Deltans had transformed the city into a fortress, with heavily armed troops and automated defense systems at every turn. The rebels were forced to claw for every inch of ground, engaging in vicious close-quarters combat with the alien defenders. Robert ducked as a plasma bolt sizzled over his head, close enough to scorch his hair. He popped up from behind a shattered wall, squeezing off a burst from his rifle that sent a Deltan soldier tumbling from a window, trailing smoke. Beside him, Olivia fought with the fluid grace of a born warrior, her plasma blade flashing as she cut down Deltan after Deltan. As they battled their way into the ruins of Times Square, a resistance fighter sprinted up, panting. "Commander, we've got word that Zorgax, the Deltan leader, is holed up in the Empire State Building. If we can take him down—" Robert nodded grimly. "We could break the back of their occupation. All right, let's do this. Olivia with me, the rest of you keep pushing forward. We'll regroup at the building." With renewed determination, Robert and Olivia fought their way to the base of the iconic skyscraper. The once grand lobby was now a shell-pocked war zone, Deltan defenders firing from behind hastily erected barricades. Robert and Olivia led the charge, rebel soldiers surging in behind them. Plasma bolts crisscrossed the space, the air thick with the stench of ozone and burning flesh. Floor by floor, the rebels battled their way up the building, facing wave after wave of fanatical Deltan defenders. The fighting was brutal and bloody, each side taking heavy casualties as they struggled for control of the shattered corridors and ruined offices. At last, Robert kicked open the door to the top-floor observation deck, Olivia at his side. There, surrounded by his elite guard, stood Zorgax. The Deltan commander was a towering figure, his scales a mottled green, and his eyes a cruel, glittering yellow. In his clawed hands he hefted a massive plasma cannon, its barrel glowing with barely restrained energy. "Foolish humans," Zorgax hissed, his voice dripping with contempt. "You think you can defeat the might of the Deltan Empire? This planet is ours now, and you are nothing more than vermin to be exterminated." Robert raised his rifle, his eyes hard. "This is our world, you son of a bitch, and we're going to take it back even if we have to go through you to do it." With a roar, Zorgax opened fire, a searing bolt of plasma leaping from his cannon. Robert and Olivia dove to the sides as the shot blasted a hole in the wall behind them. The Deltan guards surged forward, and the observation deck erupted into a whirlwind of brutal hand-to-hand combat. Robert grappled with a guard, the alien's strength incredible as it wrapped its scaly hands around his throat. He slammed his knee into the creature's gut, then followed up with a crushing blow to its skull, feeling bone shatter beneath his fist. Nearby, Olivia danced between two more guards, her plasma blade flashing. She hamstrung one, sending it crashing to the floor, then plunged her blade into the chest of the other, the alien's screech cutting off abruptly. Through the chaos, Robert saw Zorgax lining up another shot. The cannon aimed directly at Olivia's back. With a shout of warning, he hurled himself at the Deltan commander, tackling him to the ground. The two warriors rolled across the floor, trading crushing blows. Zorgax lashed out with his claws, raking bloody furrows across Robert's chest. Robert responded with a headbutt, feeling the alien's scales crack under the impact. He followed up with a series of punishing blows, driving the Deltan back. With a final desperate surge of strength, Robert wrestled the plasma cannon from Zorgax's grip. He swung it like a club, smashing it into the side of the Deltan's head with a sickening crunch. Zorgax crumpled, his skull caved in, dead before he hit the floor. Robert stood panting, the cannon slipping from his blood-slicked hands. Around him, the last of the Deltan guards fell under the rebels' onslaught. Olivia limped over, her uniform torn and stained, but a fierce grin on her face. Together they walked to the shattered windows of the observation deck. Below they could see the rebel forces pushing the Deltans back, the tide of battle turning at last. Robert tore a strip of cloth from his shirt and tied it to the barrel of a discarded rifle. He thrust the makeshift flag out the window, the fabric snapping in the wind. A ragged cheer went up from the rebels on the streets below as they saw the flag. It was a symbol of hope, a sign that humanity would never give up, never stop fighting for their world. The battle for Earth was far from over, but with Zorgax dead and the Deltan forces in disarray, the rebels had struck a crucial blow. Robert turned to Olivia, his eyes alight with a grim determination. "We've still got a lot of work to do," he said, "but this is a start. We're going to take our planet back, one city at a time if we have to. And when we're done here, we're going to free every world the Deltans have ever touched." Olivia nodded, her own resolve mirroring his. "Damn right we are. The Deltans want a war, they've got one, and it's not going to end until every last one of them is dead or driven from our galaxy." Word of Zorgax's fall and the liberation of New York spread like wildfire, igniting a spark of hope in the hearts of humans across the planet. In cities and towns, in hidden bunkers and secret hideouts, people rose up against their Deltan oppressors, emboldened by the knowledge that they were not alone in their fight. In Los Angeles, a ragtag group of survivors stormed a Deltan weapons depot, arming themselves with plasma rifles and grenades. They painted the symbol of the resistance, a clenched human fist, on the walls of the compound before disappearing into the night, ready to strike at the aliens once again. In Moscow, a former Russian Special Forces team led a daring raid on a Deltan slave pen, freeing hundreds of human captives. The soldiers armed the newly liberated prisoners, and together they fought their way through the ruined streets, overwhelming the Deltan garrison and claiming the city in the name of the resistance. Across Africa, Asia, Europe, and the Americas, similar stories played out. Humans, once cowed and broken by the Deltan occupation, found new strength in the example of Robert, Olivia, and their rebel army. They sabotaged Deltan supply lines, ambushed alien patrols, and slowly but surely began to reclaim their planet. The Deltans, their forces already stretched thin by the loss of New York, struggled to contain the growing insurrection. They lashed out with brutal reprisals, but for every human they killed, 10 more seemed to take their place, fueled by a righteous anger and an unbreakable will to be free. In the rebel headquarters, hastily established in the ruins of the Empire State Building, Robert and Olivia pored over reports from resistance cells across the globe. As encouraging as the news was, they knew that their victory was far from assured. "The Deltans still control more than half the planet," Robert said, his brow furrowed as he studied a holographic map of Earth. "And their fleet is still in orbit, ready to rain down death and destruction at a moment's notice." Olivia nodded, her eyes hard. "We need to take the fight to them. As long as they have ships in the sky, they can always come back, always threaten us." Robert zoomed in on a section of the map, a vast expanse of sand and rock. "Our spies have located the Deltan's main ground base," he said. "It's a heavily fortified compound in the middle of the Sahara, protected by energy shields and anti-aircraft batteries. If we can take it out, it would cripple their ability to coordinate their forces on the planet." "And give us a chance to hit their fleet," Olivia finished, a grim smile tugging at her lips. "I like it, but we'll need a distraction, something to keep them occupied while we mount the ground assault." Robert turned to Zoltar, the Varisian engineer who had become one of their most trusted allies. "What about the energy shields your people developed? Could they protect our ships long enough to engage the Deltan fleet?" Zoltar nodded, his eyes gleaming with excitement. Absolutely. We've been working to integrate the shields into your vessels. They should be able to withstand even the Deltan's most powerful weapons, at least for a time. Then it's settled, Robert said, his voice ringing with determination. We hit them on two fronts, a space assault to keep their fleet busy and a ground attack to take out their base. We'll need to coordinate strikes, time everything down to the second. Olivia cracked her knuckles, a feral grin spreading across her face. Then what are we waiting for? Let's bring the pain. The rebel fleet gathered in high orbit, dozens of ships bristling with weapons and shielded by shimmering Verisian energy fields. On the bridge of the flagship, Robert stood tall, his eyes fixed on the view screen and the Deltan armada arrayed before them. All ships prepare to engage, he said, his voice steady. Fire on my command. In the skies above Earth, space lit up with the flash of missiles and the searing beams of plasma cannons. The rebel ships surged forward, their shields absorbing the brunt of the Deltan counterattack as they unleashed a storm of fire on the alien fleet. On the planet's surface, hidden by the swirling sands of the Sahara, Olivia led a hand-picked team of the Resistance's best fighters. They moved silently, their approach masked by stolen Deltan cloaking tech, until the looming walls of the alien compound came into view. Breaching charges on my mark, Olivia whispered into her comm, her body tense with anticipation. 3, 2, 1, mark. The charges detonated with a thunderous roar, blasting a hole in the compound's outer defenses. Olivia was the first one through, her plasma rifle spitting blue fire as she charged into the breach. Inside the base, all was chaos. Alarms blared and Deltan soldiers scrambled to respond to the unexpected attack, but the rebels were already inside, moving with practiced precision as they cleared room after room, corridor after corridor. Olivia ducked as a plasma bolt sizzled over her head, the heat of it singeing her hair. She pivoted, her rifle coming up, and drilled a trio of shots into the Deltan trooper's chest. The alien crumpled, smoke curling from the holes in his armor. "Push forward," Olivia yelled over the din of combat. "We need to reach the command center." The rebels surged ahead, their weapons flashing as they cut down Deltan after Deltan. The aliens fought back with the ferocity of cornered beasts, but they were outmatched and outflanked, the human attackers pressing the advantage of surprise. As they battled their way deeper into the compound, Olivia's comm crackled to life. It was Robert, his voice tight with strain but alive with triumph. "The Deltan fleet is in full retreat," he shouted, the sounds of explosions and alarms nearly drowning out his words. "We've got them on the run." Olivia felt a savage grin split her face. With the Deltan ships fleeing and their ground forces in disarray, victory was within reach. She redoubled her efforts, leading her team in a final, brutal push towards the heart of the base. They found the last of the Deltans barricaded inside the command center, a circular room dominated by a holographic strategic display. The aliens had overturned consoles and equipment to form makeshift cover, and they poured plasma fire at the rebels as they tried to breach the room's blast doors. "Grenades now," Olivia ordered, lobbing a pair of plasma charges through the shattered doors. The explosives detonated with a blinding flash, and she and her team were through the breach a heartbeat later, weapons blazing. The fight was brutal and bloody, a whirlwind of clashing bodies, flashing blades, and searing plasma. But in the end, the humans stood victorious, the last of the Deltans lying dead at their feet. Olivia stood panting, her armor scorched and dented, her face streaked with sweat and alien blood. Around her, the other rebels looked similarly battered but fiercely triumphant. "Earth is ours," she said, her voice rough with exhaustion and emotion. "We've done it, we've won." But even as the words left her mouth, Olivia knew that their battle was far from over. The Deltans had been driven from Earth, but they still controlled a vast empire spanning dozens of star systems. To truly ensure humanity's freedom, the rebels would need to take the fight to the heart of Deltan space itself, to the alien homeworld where the enemy was strongest. It would be a long and bloody campaign, fraught with danger and sacrifice. But as Olivia looked around at her fellow rebels, at the indomitable spirit that blazed in their eyes, She knew that they would not rest until every human in the galaxy was free from the yoke of alien tyranny. The battle for Earth was over. The war for the stars had only just begun. In the aftermath of their victory on Earth, Robert, Olivia, and their allies gathered in the war-torn ruins of New York. As they surveyed the devastation wrought by the Deltan occupation, a fierce determination burned in their eyes. They knew that their work was far from over. "We've won a great victory here," Robert said, his voice carrying over the assembled rebels. "But the Deltans still hold sway over countless worlds. If we're going to end their tyranny once and for all, we need to take the fight to them." Olivia nodded, her gaze hard. "We'll need allies, the Krathax, the Varisians, and all the other races the Deltans have oppressed. We have to unite them behind our cause." The rebels set to work, sending envoys to the far corners of the galaxy. Robert and Olivia reached out to their Krathax comrades, while Zoltar and his Varisian contacts spread the word among their people. Slowly but surely, a great fleet began to gather, ships of every size and description, crewed by warriors of a dozen different species, all united in their hatred of the Deltan Empire. As the rebel armada prepared for its final assault, a grim piece of news reached Robert and Olivia's ears. Deltan spies had learned of a planet-killer weapon, a doomsday device capable of destroying entire worlds. The plans for this superweapon were the same ones that Robert and Olivia had stolen during their daring escape from Deltan captivity. "The weapon is being held in a heavily guarded facility on the Deltan homeworld," their informant told them, his voice trembling. "If they manage to deploy it, our fleet won't stand a chance." Robert and Olivia exchanged a look of grim determination. They knew what had to be done. Assembling a crack team of their best fighters and infiltrators, the two rebels set out on a desperate mission to the heart of the Deltan Empire. Using stolen ships and forged identification codes, they slipped past the planet's defenses, landing in a remote area near the superweapon facility. As they approached the massive complex, alarms began to blare. Deltan soldiers poured out to meet them, plasma rifles blazing. Robert and Olivia charged forward, their weapons spitting blue fire as they cut a path through the enemy ranks. They breached the facility's outer doors, fighting their way through corridors filled with smoke and the flash of plasma bolts. Deltan guards fell before their onslaught, but more always seemed to take their place, pouring out in a never-ending tide of scales and claws. In the chaos of battle, Robert and Olivia planted their explosives, setting the charges at key structural points throughout the complex. As they fought their way back out, the ground shook with distant explosions. The rebel fleet had arrived, engaging the Deltan defenses in a titanic space battle high above the planet. The infiltration team burst from the facility, racing across the open ground as the complex began to shudder and collapse behind them. Deltan soldiers poured out in pursuit, their weapons filling the air with deadly plasma. Robert and Olivia turned to face the onrushing horde, buying time for their comrades to reach the extraction point. They fought like demons, their rifles blazing until their power cells ran dry, then switching to knives and hand-to-hand combat in a whirlwind of blood and steel. Just as it seemed they would be overwhelmed, a series of massive explosions ripped through the superweapon facility, the shockwaves throwing the pursuing Deltans to the ground. Robert and Olivia staggered to their feet, racing to join their team, as the complex collapsed in on itself in a roiling cloud of fire and debris. High above, the rebel fleet pressed its attack, the Deltan forces thrown into disarray by the loss of their planet-killer weapon. Varisian energy projectors and Krathax plasma bombs pounded the enemy ships, while swarms of rebel fighters darted through the chaos, picking off targets of opportunity. Seizing the moment, Robert and Olivia gave the order for the final phase of the operation to begin. Dropships and assault shuttles rained down from the rebel fleet, disgorging thousands of armed freedom fighters onto the surface of the Deltan homeworld. The battle for the planet had begun. The fighting was fierce and bloody, the rebels clashing with the Deltan defenders in the streets and skies of the alien world. Robert and Olivia led the charge, rallying their troops forward, ever deeper into the heart of the enemy stronghold. With every block they took, every building they cleared, the rebels tightened their grip on the Deltan capital. The alien warriors fought with the desperate ferocity of cornered beasts, but against the courage and determination of the Allied forces, they could not stand. Finally, as the smoke of battle began to clear, the rebel flag rose over the shattered ruins of the Deltan citadel. The empire that had once seemed so unassailable lay broken at the feet of those it had sought to enslave. But even as the cheers of victory echoed across the ravaged cityscape, Robert and Olivia knew that their work was far from finished. The Deltan homeworld might be taken, but there were still countless worlds out there, planets that had yet to taste the sweet air of freedom. The two rebel leaders shared a look of grim resolve, the fire of purpose burning bright in their eyes. The fight would go on for as long as it took, until every trace of Deltan oppression was wiped from the galaxy. But for now, for this one glorious moment, they could savor the knowledge that they had struck a blow for liberty that would echo through the ages. As the smoke of battle cleared and the last of the Deltan resistance was crushed, Robert and Olivia stood amidst the ruins of the alien capital. The once gleaming towers lay shattered, the streets choked with rubble and the bodies of the fallen. The stench of death hung heavy in the air, a grim reminder of the terrible cost of their victory. But even as they surveyed the destruction, the two rebels knew that their work was far from over. The Deltan Empire may have been broken, but countless worlds across the galaxy still bore the scars of its tyranny. The process of rebuilding and healing would be long and difficult, and they knew that they had a vital role to play in shaping the new order that would arise from the ashes of the old. In the weeks that followed, Robert and Olivia were hailed as heroes by the people of Earth and the other liberated worlds. They were greeted with parades and celebrations wherever they went, their names spoken with reverence and awe. The leaders of the Rebel Alliance offered them positions of power and influence, urging them to take their rightful place at the forefront of the new galactic order. But Robert and Olivia politely declined, their hearts set on a different path. They knew that their true calling lay not in the halls of power, but on the front lines of the rebuilding effort. And so they returned to Earth, rolling up their sleeves and diving into the hard work of reconstruction. They helped to clear the rubble from the streets, to rebuild the shattered infrastructure, and to provide food and shelter to the countless refugees and displaced persons who had lost everything in the war. They worked tirelessly, pouring their hearts and souls into the task of healing their wounded world. But even as they labored to rebuild what had been lost, a new threat was gathering on the horizon. Strange reports began to filter in from the outer reaches of the galaxy, tales of ships disappearing without a trace and entire colonies going dark overnight. Rumors spread of a terrifying new enemy, one that made the Deltans seem like mere children in comparison. At first, Robert and Olivia tried to ignore the growing sense of unease, telling themselves that they had earned their rest and that others could take up the fight in their stead. But as the reports grew more frequent and more disturbing, they knew that they could not stand idly by. And so, with heavy hearts, they bid farewell to their loved ones and set out once more into the unknown, determined to uncover the truth behind the strange occurrences and to face whatever dangers lay ahead. As their ship hurtled through the void of space, Robert and Olivia pored over the reports and data they had gathered, trying to make sense of the scattered pieces of the puzzle. But nothing could have prepared them for the horror that awaited them when they finally reached their destination. They found themselves face to face with a new race of aliens, one that defied all understanding. The creatures were beings of pure energy, their forms shifting and pulsing with an otherworldly glow. Their technology was unlike anything the rebels had ever seen, far beyond even the most advanced Deltan devices. Robert and Olivia watched in growing horror as the aliens, which came to be known as the Void, began to move against the other races of the galaxy. Their ships were vast and terrible, capable of destroying entire worlds with a single shot. Their armies were relentless and unstoppable, made up of creatures that could phase through solid matter and regenerate from even the most grievous wounds. The Void had been watching and waiting for eons, biding their time until the moment was right to strike. And with the Deltan Empire gone and the other races weakened by the long war, They saw their chance to conquer and enslave all of known space. Robert and Olivia knew that they had to act quickly if they were to have any hope of stopping this new threat. They raced back to the heart of the rebel alliance, sounding the alarm and calling upon their allies to stand with them once more. It was a difficult and bitter pill to swallow, coming so soon after their hard-won victory over the Deltans. But the rebels knew that they could not rest on their laurels, not when the fate of the entire galaxy was at stake. And so they came together once more, the remnants of the rebel fleet and the warriors of a dozen different races, united in their determination to stand against the void and to protect the freedom they had fought so hard to win. The war that followed was unlike any that had come before. The void's technology and abilities were far beyond anything the rebels had ever faced, and their numbers seemed endless. The rebels fought bravely, their ships and soldiers hurling themselves against the enemy with reckless abandon. But it was a losing battle from the start. The Void's ships were too powerful, their warriors too relentless. The rebels were pushed back, their fleet shattered, and their armies scattered. Worlds that had only just been freed from Deltan rule fell once more under the shadow of a new and even more terrible oppressor. In desperation, Robert and Olivia hatched a final desperate plan. They gathered a small team of their best warriors, the most skilled and fearless of the rebel fighters. Together, they would infiltrate the heart of the Void's empire, fighting their way through the enemy's defenses until they reached the center of their power. It was a suicide mission, and they all knew it. But Robert and Olivia could see no other way. If they could not defeat the Void head-on, then they would have to strike at them from within, tearing out their heart and destroying them from the inside out. The journey to the Void's central nexus was a nightmare of twisting corridors and impossible geometries, of shadow and fire and the screams of the damned. The rebels fought every step of the way, their weapons and armor pushed to the breaking point by the relentless onslaught of the enemy. But against all odds, they made it through. They emerged into a vast chamber, a pulsing, writhing mass of energy that seemed to fill the entire universe, and there, at the center of it all, they found the truth of the Void. The creatures were not a race at all, but a single entity, a vast and ancient intelligence that had been manipulating the races of the galaxy for eons. It had no physical form, no single point of vulnerability that could be targeted or destroyed. Robert and Olivia looked upon the heart of the Void, and they knew that they had only one choice. They could not hope to destroy the creature through force of arms, not when it was so vast and so powerful. But perhaps, if they were willing to sacrifice everything, they could still strike a blow that would shatter its power and give the galaxy a chance to survive. Together, they overloaded their weapons, setting them to detonate in a single massive explosion. They looked into each other's eyes one last time, a wordless goodbye passing between them, and then they charged forward, hurling themselves into the heart of the Void with a final defiant cry. The explosion was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, a blinding flash of light that seemed to consume everything in its path. The Void screamed in agony as the blast tore through its essence, ripping it apart from the inside out. The shockwave rippled outward, shattering the creature's ships and scattering its armies to the far corners of the universe. In the end, the rebels emerged victorious, but at a terrible cost. Robert and Olivia were gone, along with countless other brave warriors who had given their lives to save the galaxy from the Void's tyranny. The survivors returned to their homeworlds, shock and grief etched into their faces. They had won, but the price had been so high, so unimaginably high. The scars of the war would linger for generations, the memories of the fallen forever etched into the hearts and minds of those who had lived to see the dawn of a new age. But even in their sorrow, the people of the galaxy knew that they owed everything to the courage and sacrifice of Robert and Olivia, and to all those who had fought and died alongside them. They were the heroes of a new era, the saviors who had given everything to ensure that the galaxy would never again fall under the shadow of tyranny and oppression. And so their story was told and retold, passed down from generation to generation, as a reminder of the strength and resilience of the galactic spirit. In the face of impossible odds, in the darkest of times, there would always be those who would rise up and fight for what was right. Robert and Olivia may have been gone, but their legacy would endure, a shining beacon of hope and inspiration for all the generations yet to come. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.